Laura Fleshman developed a love for running early on. She grew up in a suburb of Los Angeles and came from a working-class family. Her dad was a Hollywood prop maker, and her mom was a homemaker. It was a simple life in a simple town, and she, from a young age, had dreams to burst out of this small bubble. For her, running was a means to make something of herself, to be free.
I was always fast, and it wasn't until middle school when we had to do a mile run every week where I began doing it on a regular basis. And that weekly run was a way for me to track my progress and to fall a little bit more in love with it. Then I ended up doing it in high school as a cross-country runner and built community around it and became part of my identity and has been with me ever since.
After high school, Fleshman went on to Stanford University, where she ran track and field while balancing her studies in human biology and psychology. She didn't receive any athletic scholarships to Stanford, so worked random jobs on campus to help pay for her tuition. Despite these hurdles, over the span of 4 years, Fleshman gained notoriety in the sport, winning 5 NCAA championships while at Stanford. After college, she went on to win 2 U.S. national championships in the 5,000-meter run category. Today, she's retired, but remains one of the most decorated American distance runners of all time. Now, she's speaking out about what needs to change in the sport to better support young women. One big issue is that all too often, female bodies, including hers, are directly compared to those of elite male runners.
As I was going through the sports system, I noticed that there was a lot of pressure to keep your body small. Normal physiological changes like breasts and hips and increased body fat percentage were viewed as impediments. Puberty was viewed as this injury a girl can't come back from, when these were all normal experiences that are on our way to our own timeline of excellence. So that was tough. It made puberty into a scary thing when it should be just normalized and celebrated. And college was a similar thing. Most of us had gone through puberty by that point, but our bodies were still optimizing themselves for fertility during those ages, while our male peers were getting leaner and more powerful with every workout, it seemed. And we had this moment of a plateau, or some of us had a short-term decline as we were adjusting to these new bodies, and our bones and ligaments were revving up and sending us on our way to our best selves in our 20s.
On top of these big changes, athletes were also heavily scrutinized about their number on the scale.
It makes no sense that we would take what typically happens to a male body who runs a lot and then apply it to every female body, that the same thing should happen. There are physics involved where, to a certain degree, when you're carrying less mass, that it can feel easier, you can run faster, but that is not a universal law that you should be nitpicking down to the pound or to the body fat percentage. And that's how we're taking that information and presenting it to developing female bodies, causing them to obsess over a pound here, a pound there, trying to make it so that when they jump, nothing jiggles. Like these ridiculous standards and norms that just take things way beyond.
These standards also apply in some households where parents are heavily invested in their child's athletic success.
Parents can cause a lot of harm in these spaces. I get emails and direct messages from parents concerned about their daughters getting a little bit slower as their body changes and wanting nutrition tips when they're really barking up the wrong tree, and they should be supporting those changes and looking at those body changes as part of a larger story of their daughter becoming her strongest self.
And Fleshman says it's not just parents, coaches, or sports teams that are the drivers of this standard. It's also some multi-billion-dollar athletic brands that share the blame. When you see images of extremely lean runners with no acne or imperfections spread across these large campaigns, you start to wonder, what's wrong with me?
Who you see competing in individual sports in the Olympics on the women's side is not necessarily who is the most talented or who has the most merit. Those sports don't have leagues or union contracts where some sort of minimum salary is guaranteed on merit. What you look like and how, quote, marketable you are is the largest factor in whether or not you're going to have a chance to keep doing this sport after college. And so with that comes all of the kind of gendered, patriarchal, objectifying ideas about the female body that have been around forever. And they're still alive and well in sports marketing. I was offered half of what my male peers were offered, and I was offered more than some of my peers because what I look like matched more of what their beauty ideal was at the time. And that's very messed up. It's something that needs to be unveiled.
This unrealistic microscopic focus on weight, muscle mass, and how marketable you are based on beauty does a lot of damage. It leads to injuries, long-term physical ailments, and a myriad of mental health issues, such as eating disorders, anxiety, and depression. Fleshman herself carries the legacy of being one of the best distance runners in collegiate sports to never make it to the Olympics. During each of the Olympic years in 2004, 2008, and 2012, she was riddled with different injuries. In 2016, she retired from elite running altogether. Today, she's a fierce advocate in bettering the space so history doesn't repeat itself.
There should be mandatory coaching certifications for anyone that works with female-bodied people, especially when you work with women and girls who are going through body changes of puberty. That is the highest risk time period where we are coming up short in supporting them. And it baffles me that there's no mandatory training in breast development, puberty, menstruation, like all of these things that half of the population is experiencing that's impacting their embodied experience of sport.
And Fleshman does recognize that there's been a lot of progress over the last 20 years. In part, it's thanks to the many female athletes at the top of their sport who are demanding better.
There's a movement for pay equity led largely by women's soccer that's helping us understand, helping raise awareness of just how inequitable things are. Primarily Black women have been leading the way in changing how we view agency and mental health in sport with the work of Simone Biles, Serena Williams, Naomi Osaka, Allison Felix, Alicia Montano. So we're not talking about just running here. We're talking about an overall comparison of the female body to a male standard of physique, excellence, performance trajectory, etc. We need our own standards that optimize our health, our longevity, and our long-term performance. And that's something we can do.
You can find out more about this topic and our guest, Lauren Fleshman, by visiting viewpointsradio.org. You can also check out Fleshman's new book, Good for a Girl, A Woman Running in a Man's World, now available online and in bookstores. Our executive producer is Amira Zaveri. I'm Gary Price. This segment is brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. If you've had COVID, you can get it again. And next time, it could be worse, especially for those 50 or older or with a chronic condition. An updated vaccine gives you better protection from COVID's worst outcomes. Find COVID vaccines near you at vaccines.gov. We can do this. Coming up on Viewpoints.
The best human solvers are still better than the best artificial intelligence solvers, too.
Long before Wordle, there was the crossword. Then,
it's not just somebody angry at a school board meeting. It's how maybe an entire set of school librarians in one school district are afraid of going to jail, so they're going to remove whatever books might get them in trouble.
The growing movement to ban controversial books. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows and find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints.